Practice Makes Perfect by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 8. Just a Little Greed, Part 2. John tilted his head. So I gotta ask, are you and Weiss good now? Yep. Ruby swallowed once and smacked her lips and looked up from a hearty breakfast of bacon and eggs. We're besties again. Besties better than the resties. We bristled up a little, the faintest hint of color hitting her cheeks while she tucked into her own cafeteria fare. I wouldn't go that far. The little Reaper turned wide eyes on her. But didn't you say you'd be the best teammate ever? Her face turned scarlet. Ruby? Yang snickered. Why, yes, Blake chimed in. I believe those were her words. Weiss rounded on her. Not you two. You were supposed to be asleep, all of you. John sank back into his seat as the quartet began to squabble anew, this time their words lacking the bite of days past. By now, it seemed more habit than anything else. Fine by him. Teammates shouldn't fight between themselves. After all, a team was like a family. Family stuck together. Family meant no one got left behind. Umph. What's wrong? It's just I'm not used to being away from everyone for this long. Never thought I'd get homesick. He could see them seated at the table in his mind's eye. The image seemed to overlap that of his friends. Mom was probably making a hearty breakfast with saffron while Dad and Violin prepared in a fresh bushel of apples that would make Sabrine and Sable jealous, of course, to which Jean and Azula would demand attention in return while he looked on fondly. A hand came down on John's shoulder, jolting him out of his dream. Relax. She must have mistook his stress for something else because she clapped him on the back. They're good, Goldilocks. Don't worry about it. John frowned. There it was again. The blasted nickname. I really wish you'd stop calling me that. Fair enough, she leered. How about Whiskers? Prefer that? Better that than Vomit Boy, Kerma chimed in. Hey, might as well get used to it. Nora shoved another forkful of pancakes into her mouth, utterly unaware of his inner diatribe. Nicknames are sacred, John. She held up a finger, taking on what he hoped was a fox solemn tone. Once a name finds you, there's no going back. Henceforth thy nickname shall be Whiskers, O fearless leader. Plaintive blue eyes turned upon Ren and Pyro. Please tell me she's joking. Unfortunately, no. The former shrugged. She's incredibly stubborn when it comes to these things. She gave his shoulder a little pat. I'm sorry. Whatever disagreement Weiss and Ruby had must have been solved when he wasn't looking because, come breakfast, the duo were thick as thieves. At least John assumed they were. Weiss wasn't snapping at Ruby, and when the former gave advice, the latter listened. Almost made him envious that he didn't know the first thing about being a leader. Maybe his teammates had suggestions. Ow! Another voice sliced through his thoughts once more, cutting them into ribbons. That hurts. See? A rough brain voice chortled. I told you they were real. Neither came from their table. John blinked, wondering why everyone fell silent. Weiss looked chagrined. Ruby and Yang were glaring at something off to the side. Blake joined them. Indeed, she glared golden daggers across the cafeteria. He followed the Team Ruby's gaze and soon saw the target of their ire. Poor Velvet. Pyra palmed her face. Is Carden at it again? Yeah. Nora's fork bent in her grasp. Ren pursed his lips. Despicable. On that they were in agreement. Blue eyes widened as he beheld an absolute giant of a student yanking on a girl's long ears. Actual ears. He had a poor rabbit fondness by them. Friends laughing, fists yanking hard as they all looked on and mocked their plight. She struggled to escape, to no avail. He heard a whimper thread through her lips. Please stop. A fire ignited deep inside John's chest, burning bright and hot. Kerma noticed his anger at once, if only because he was a part of him. What's got you what you got you so hot and bothered? Oh, his words trailed off into a deep bass rumble of dismay. John, no, you've already made enough of a scene this week. His uncle made a fair point, but still, why isn't anyone helping her? Much to his chagrin, his friends looked away, even Ruby dithered. Guys, why stared at her nails? I'm sure she can handle herself. Says the Schnee. Blake sneered. You have no idea what it means to suffer. That has nothing to do with it. They fell back into another argument. John scarcely heard them. A strange buzzing sound hummed in his ears. So you're not going to do anything? None of you? Weiss wilted. It's not our place. She's a second year. I'm sure she can handle herself. He hated that kind of logic, if only because he'd once been the same. Before he'd gathered up the resolve to run away, to make something of himself, he'd been much the same, always hiding from responsibility, cringing away when faced with any sort of real danger or peril. Even now he was terrified of being in Beacon, afraid of being caught, of his transcripts being revealed for the fakes they were, afraid of his family dragging him back home. But despite that fear, he persisted. Why couldn't he? Please, Yang smacked her lips with an audible pop. You're loud, you're loaded. Just pay him to leave her alone or something. Weiss scowled at her. If you think I'm the sort to simply pay people to do what I want, then you're sadly mistaken. It sounded like she was making excuses. Power should be used for the betterment of others. Her eyes snapped to him. And what do you know about power, Ark? Crap. He said that aloud, hadn't he? There could be no taking that back now. To be fair, John Uzumaki Ark hated few things in this world. Most of them started with the letter B, as it were, broccoli, bullshit, and bullies. The latter was right up there at the top of his list. His dislike of them came not from being bullied himself, his sisters had seen to that, but from seeing it firsthand. A village boy had tried bullying one of his younger siblings once. Once. The wrath of an ark was a terrible thing, and sometimes the only way to beat a bully is to give them a taste of their own medicine. He stood. Para saw it. John, I'll be right back. Don't wait up for me. Wren took one look at his expression and frowned. What do you intend to do? He turned a smile on his comrade. It felt brittle on his face. I just want to talk with him. Nora whooped and popped a fist into the air. That a boy, Johnny. Break his legs. I'll take some pictures. I'm just going to talk to him, Nora. The words sounded hollow, even to him. Loudly, repeatedly, with my fists. His legs were moving almost before he realized what was happening. Someone made a grab for his arm. He never saw who, but he did see Blake reach across the table and give them a good hard shove. Whoever held him let go with a squawk, and he was off. 9 long strides carried him across the mess hall. Now remember, my dear boy, Juniper's voice came back to him suddenly while he walked. We Arcs tend to experience emotions a little differently than most. In a moment he was back in the past, sitting cross-legged before her in the glade. We live life vividly, brilliantly, sometimes too much so. She touched a finger to his forehead. Take me and your father, for instance. When an arc comes to care for someone, they love them with all their heart and soul. When an arc laughs, we do so loudly than anyone else. But when an arc hates, well, that's why we're teaching you self-control. Right now, John didn't feel the control. What would Dad do? He tried to imagine it. Beat his ass! Yeah, probably that. Now that he was close enough to hear her cries properly, so too did he see Velvet's face, wrought in pain. His fingers twitched, curling into claws. Said claws twitched, aching for action. Control. Mustn't let his chakra slip out. Mustn't transform here. He took a deep breath to calm himself and crossed the threshold. Hey, stop pulling her ears! Caught up in their merriment as they were, and with their backs to him, Tim Cardinal didn't notice John. Velvet did. Wide eyes snapped to his, wet with tears. John felt his left eye begin to twitch. I said! His right hand flicked out, seized the Cardin by the wrist, and yanked it down. The boy yelped in surprise. His grip went slack, and battered Bunny scrambled back. Hands off the bunny! Deprived by his prey, and with clawed fingers bitten into his wrist, Cardin took notice of him at last, up close. John realized his foe was rather tall, almost frightfully so, a good head taller than him, and all muscle beneath that uniform. Anyone else would have paused, taken a step back to reassess. Size didn't matter. He'd seen bigger, and so he allowed Cardin to tear his arm free, allow him to grab him by the shirt, allow him to reel him in. Who the hell are you? Just John. He didn't stop smiling. A normal guy. Is that so? Cardin's face filled his field of vision with a sneer. You've ruined my fun, Johnny boy. What are you going to do about it? Kerma rolled his eyes with a put upon sigh. Now you've done it. John exhaled in a short, sharp burst of anger. This. His foot slammed down harder than Nora's hammer, leaving the table riven in two to send food flying in every direction. Team Cardinal recoiled in surprise. Those tables were reinforced, built to last, manufactured to endure heavy blows from angry students who didn't quite know their own strength. Naturally, John had no way of knowing that. He didn't much care. They were still reeling when John stepped in, seized Cardin by the right ear, and yanked. He yanked hard. A howl of pain filled the cafeteria. If anyone had been aware of their scuffle, they were now. "What the hell are you doing? Doesn't feel so good, does it?" The blonde reared back, hauling the larger boy with him, heedless of Velvet's startled stare. "This hurts, you know. I've had it done to me before. Painful, isn't it?" Carden bellowed and tried to break his grip, to no avail. "Now this is a lesson your father isn't all too fond of." Juniper smiled at John from the past. "But it's an important one all the same." She held up a finger and his eyes followed. "You're strong, John, but your body has its limits. When you're engaging an enemy, not a sibling, not a friend, and certainly not someone you love, it's all about perception. You must have fear, surprise, and intimidation on your side, for if any one of these things is lacking, it would be best to retreat. Break your foes before you face them, my son. In a world like this, it's the only way to survive." Yeah, Mom was a little scary when it came to life lessons, but they served him well now. Dove lunged at him from the corner of his eye. He reached back, caught him by the face, and swung him into Russell as one might a large stick. Sky sputtered as his teammates crashed on top him, all but pinning him to the floor. They were still struggling to rise when John kicked back and flattened with half the table. A chorus of groans greeted him. They didn't get up after that. Carden snarled in his grasp and threaded a wild haymaker. "Why, you—" John took it to the face without so much as a blink. He didn't fight like a huntsman. He fought like a shinobi. Satisfying as it might be, he didn't need to beat Carden and his team here. He just needed to terrify them. Action, acting, acting it was then. He was a good actor, mostly. "Who made you a god, little man?" With a snarl, he reared back, slamming Carden's face first into what remained of the once proud table. "Not that mace, not that uniform, nothing!" He swung him down again, stunning the bigger boy. "You wanna scare people? Fine, I could use a scarecrow." His forehead slammed against Carden's, teeth gone sharp and eyes blazing red. "You're gonna be my personal message board." He folded Carden Winchester like a pretzel. A ways behind him, Velvet tilted her head at the sight. Yang whistled. "Ouch, he's gonna feel that in the morning." Para's hands flew to her mouth to stifle a small giggle. "Oh my!" Mercifully, combat class came next. It was here that Miss Goodwitch lived up to her reputation. She was certainly glaring at John as if she was expecting him to fly off the handles at any given moment. She suspected, of course, but she couldn't prove anything. No one had stepped forward to testify against him, and Team Cardinal was decidedly unconscious. In theory, it was just a good fight. It was a food fight gone awry, a remarkably one-sided food fight that had only affected Team Cardinal and no one else. Just a bit of target aggression that had left four unruly boys in the school infirmary. It happened, of course. Boys would be boys, and no matter the punishment, it was well worth. Oh crap, she's looking like she wanted to snap him in half. "Is there a problem, Mr. Ark?" Crap. She caught him staring. He pointedly looked away from her and whistled innocently. "I say again, you're an awful liar. You've got the guilt written all over your face." "Nonsense. He could do this. Shouldn't be hard." "John Ark will face—" Green Eyes sought them out. "Miss Schnee, you seem eager today. Why don't you try your luck?" John hope of pride and confidence died an awful choking death. He wheezed. "Why?" The girl absolutely growled at him. Well, this boded poorly. Pyro squeezed his shoulders. "Fight well, partner." "It's not the fighting I'm worried about." His gaze found the small Schnee with a wince. She was already glaring icy daggers at him. Indeed, he could have sworn he heard her snarl at him when he ascended the steps. Was she still mad at him? Girls were weird. He just didn't understand them sometimes. He hadn't done anything to upset her. Had he? You really think you're something special, don't you? She grit her teeth. First that scene in initiation, and now the cafeteria. How long do you intend to mock me? What? His cringe wasn't all that feigned. Me? Special? I'm not special at all, and I wasn't mocking you. Lies! Weiss lifted Mertonester. John brandished the Corsair Morse. Miss Goodwitch stepped back sharply. Begin! With a flick of his wrist, Corsair Morse transformed. Her hilt lengthened as the metal blade fell back. In its place, a blazing line of blue plasma burst free with an electric snap and hiss. He brandished the saber of light, sending it humming in the air. A ruby squealed from the sideline. Your sword really does transform. John curtained a smile. Really, the second form was good enough for something like this. No need to burst out the third here. Carefully he modulated his chakra and set his saber to low power. Wouldn't do to cut anyone in half after all. That definitely wasn't normal, and while he might not like Weiss at the moment, he liked Ruby. Weiss wasn't a friend, but she wasn't an enemy either. It availed him not. She arched an eyebrow. How did your sword turn into that? Ruby nearly flung herself into the arena. I want that! No. John planted his feet with a sigh. You don't? Weiss closed on him in a whirl of steel. She had impeccable form, and coming from an arc, that was saying something. Weiss' knee didn't so much duel as she did dance. Her poise perched on perfection. Mertonester weaved a cold cage of steel round him, forcing him to defend in kind. John ducked back as a low swipe raked his chin, drawing a thin line of blood across his cheek. He parried, then gave ground, and Weiss chased him with a hiss. A dull click of her rapier was his only warning before she swiped at him anew. Stop running, she snarled. Fight me like you mean it, you oaf. I will not be made a fool of. He let her rapier trip him up and sending him sprawling. Her words stung more than the fall. Maybe he should try after all. Just a pinch, just a little. She wanted him to. Blue eyes flashed as he climbed upright. All right, you asked for it. Weiss barely had time to raise Mertonester in her defense, where then she found herself fighting a storm of blue light. Previews, fight me! And so he did. You can fly? Nope. Jump good. Be brave, John. I don't think bravery's the problem. A hand caught his sleeve. This isn't over, Ark. Something unfamiliar itched at his chest. John scratched his cheek. I think it is, though. Ruby slammed into him. Give me your sword. Ruby, no. The little weapon addict giggled. Ruby, yes. Show me more. Show me. Show me. Yang shrugged. You brought this on yourself. She's never gonna stop until you give up the goods. Ah, Yang! Don't say it like that. Penny held up her creation. Like this, grandfather? Did I make it properly? Naruto looked away, face gone red. Too adorable. Must protect. Juniper was less subtle. She all but dove on her. You think I'm ready for battle? No, I'm ready for war. How the hell are you this strong? John allowed himself a smile, the first real smile he'd felt in quite some time. Push-ups, sit-ups, and plenty of juice. That has nothing to do with us. John caught it and frowned. Like us? Did Blake think he was a faunus? Wait, was she one? No, not important now. I really don't think I need any training, Pyra. Surely you wouldn't say no to a spar. Why did everyone want to fight him? Was this a rite of passage or something? And why was Kurama cackling in the back of his head? Meh, it's fine. Blake's jaw clicked open. Excuse me? He'd ferreted out her secret, and that was all he had to say. I mean, I ran away from my family too. John shrugged. We can be runaways together. Her lower lips trembled. Blake, you all right? For a moment he let the mask slip. You don't seem to understand. John grabbed the Beowulf by the face, forcing its jaw apart with a horrific pop. This is my team. His eyes flashed red. These are my friends. His body burning gold and black. Leave them alone! He tore it in half. And you're still not tired? Well, my dad says I have a lot of energy. Sap, tear trickled down. He sneezed. This is hell. End of chapter 8.